بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقربنا إلى حبك يا أرحم الراحمين. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this a gathering that is beneficial, a gathering by which we grow to love and appreciate the sunnah of our Habib Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam more. A gathering by which we take knowledge from his life and use that knowledge to better the relationships that we have. Our relationships, typically we can look at them at three levels. And this is what I wrote about in When Hearing Becomes Listening, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught us about connection. He wasn't sent to split up people, but to bring people together. And he brought people together in the sense of he taught them how to be whole first. And then he taught those whole people how to make whole families. And those whole families made whole societies and civilizations. And so typically we can look at the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam teaching connections on three levels. Connection to one's self, connection to those around you, and last but not least, of course not least, connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the three levels of connections that he taught people. And subhanallah, Abdullah bin Salam, he was a Jewish rabbi at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he arrived in Medina. And when the Prophet ﷺ was coming into Medina, he came to watch the parade. I mean, it was a parade. Y'all know what parades are. It's Cali, right? Never mind. Okay, bad joke. He came to watch the parade because the Prophet ﷺ was coming from Quba to Medina, and it was a big deal. Everybody was, happy. The Prophet ﷺ is here. Ja'a Rasulullah. People had never seen him before. It's not like now with Instagram, you know someone before you meet them, you know their face. Many of them had never seen his face before. And Abdullah bin Salam was one of those people. He heard the qualities. He knew what he was like. He saw the signs. And so before he arrived, he was ready to take the Shahada. And he was a Jewish rabbi. So he goes that I went to go see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the first thing he says is, I looked at his face and I could see this wasn't the face of a liar. Yani the nur from his face, the light from his face, the serenity from his face, all of that. He said it communicated so much to me just looking at his face. But then he said, the first words that he said were, Afshu salam, spread peace. This is important, write this down. The first words, meaning, hold on, let's get the importance of this. The significance is this is the foundation of a new Islamic society. This is the first, beginning of the society of Islam that will come for the next till Qiyamah. And it's the first day he's coming into this new city. And he says the first words that I hear him repeating are four things. Spread peace. Afshu salam. Afshu salam. Spread peace. Wasilul arham. Wasilul arham. Wata'imut ta'am. And feed people. Feed people. And wasallu bil layli wa nasu niyam. And pray at night. Pray at night when people are sleeping. The prayer at night is to bring connection with God. The feeding and the salam, all of these are to connect us to other people. But the prayer also connects one to themselves as well. So my point here was to say that he taught us connection. He came to bring us together. And the first thing I think all of us need to appreciate is that when we embody and learn his teachings, the first thing that we gain is a clarity of self, a sense of self, my purpose in this cosmos. What am I doing? Who am I? Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, he says that one of the nata'ij or natija, one of the consequences of disobedience of God is what they call al-wahsha fi nufus. Wahsha means like a lack of familiarity with your own self. So you'll notice when you've been in these bouts of sin and you look in the mirror, you low-key don't recognize yourself. You're like, yo, that's not me right there. Yo, what's going on? And what happens is over time you can become so unfamiliar with yourself that you hate being alone with yourself. You hate being alone it's awkward. It's like when you're in the elevator with some strange weirdo in San Fran. Just you and the weirdo in the elevator. And that like, you're only going up 3 flights, but it feels like, you pick your phone up. You pretend like you're talking to someone because you feel weird. They say that's what happens with your own nafs. You become so distant from yourself that you no longer feel comfortable alone. So I always need something to listen to. I always have to listen to something. I can't be by myself. I need white noise. I need all of this stuff so I'm not with myself and my own thoughts. And that's not a good place to be. And so when I look at what we're going to talk about tonight, I'm very encouraged by all the brothers here, number one, because I think it's time that we reclaim masculinity in a prophetic way. I mean, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone because compassionate has become a trope. Yo, that dude's compassionate right there. That's a compassionate imam right there. I was like, are we in the twilight zone? Like, when did compassionate become like, because last time I checked, Ra'uf ar-Rahim was the sifa of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was gentle, he was strong. I mean, he was strong, he was brave. But compassion is a quality that I think in our day and age, we need to reclaim prophetic masculinity. And so when we talk about prophetic EQ, typically our cultures make emotional expression and understanding and even talking about emotion a feminine thing. But it's not. That's not fair. That's not doing justice to what he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, put so much work into. I'll share a narration with you. This is one of the last narrations, but I really want to preface what we're doing. I'm going to spend a little time just so we understand. There's a narration that is, there's a narration of a man. His name is Aqra bin Habis. He was a rough man, Bedouin, Arab, leader of his people. He accepted Islam, but later on. And the Prophet ﷺ is talking to him. He's a leader, by the way, very much like masculine, right? Very masculine guy. And in front of this man, Hassan and Hussein, the grandchildren of the Prophet ﷺ, grandsons, they come running. They're little babies. And the Prophet ﷺ, he picks them up and he kisses them. And Aqra, he goes, I have 10 sons, and I've never kissed one of them. You know what I mean? Like, what? He was flexing. He was flexing. This inability, like I've been a stone wall for so long that I've gone through 10 sons, 10 children crawling, 10 babies looking me in the eyes, 10 sons that say, Baba, Baba, Baba. I've had 10 sons. Think about those critical moments with your sons. The pictures you look back at, now they're knuckleheads, right? But you look back at the pictures and you're like, I remember this little thing right here. Remember this little dude? He went through 10 of those, and he goes, I never kissed one of them. And he was flexing. Yeah. I mean, low key, that takes work. It takes work to be hard-hearted, yo. And the Prophet looked at him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said to him, Awa amlik in naza Allahu min qalbika rahma? Is it my fault if God has snatched mercy from your heart? As if to say, why are you flexing? Meaning, as if to say, I feel sorry for you. You haven't kissed your sons? 10 of them? Now, what's most troubling in our day and age is somehow we've gone back to that. Somehow we have people in this room who say, yeah, I can't remember the last time I told my son I loved him. Or my daughter, I love them. Or my wife, I love her. Now, Shaykh Mikaeel, well, where's that in the Sunnah? I mean, there's a clear hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, if you love a person, tell them you love them. Tell them you love them. You know that guy next to you? You know him? Do you love him? Tell him you love him. That was good. That was easy. That was easy. Typically, it's a little bit more awkward. Oh, it's San Francisco. I thought I was in Texas, man. The problem of the Prophet's time is that men saw, it's so funny. At the Prophet ﷺ's time is men saw emotion as weakness, but here's the deal. He had to teach these people how to feel again. He had to teach them how to feel again because, and this is the thing I want you to write down, you cannot pass on this message except that you have a heart that can feel and you can communicate with other hearts. بَلْ هُوَ آيَاتٌ بَيِّنَاتٌ فِي صُدُورِ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ. This message is from heart to heart. The scholars, they say, الْعِلْمِ لَيْسَ مَا فِي السُّطُورِ وَلَكِنْ هُوَ مَا فِي صُدُورِ. Knowledge isn't what's in the lines of paper. Knowledge is what's in heart. And so communication of this message necessitated people that understood hearts. But they were brick walls. They committed, what's it called? They murdered their daughters alive. That's cold-hearted. Now, it wasn't, the scholars, they say it wasn't as vastly practiced as we would think it would be, but it was still practiced nonetheless. But Aqra ibn Habis, his example to us, shows us what was the general understanding. Another man came to Medina, and he literally said, I'm looking for that man who kisses his grandchildren. Where's he at? Meaning, he had become so known for emotion that people in the other side of the Arabian Peninsula, if they want to highlight who he is, he's that guy. I'll give you another example. When his son Ibrahim died. His son Ibrahim died as a young child, 1.5 years old. And he's holding the baby, and the baby's passing away in his arms. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is crying. He's weeping. And here he taught us a very important hadith. And we could spend the whole night talking about it. We won't, but we could. The Sahaba saw him crying and they said, even you, Ya Rasulullah? See, look at the mentality. The mentality in the room and in their time was, when you get to a certain level of spirituality, you should be unfazable. Yo, when I get to that level, I could lose children, nothing gonna hurt me, I'm good. My wife passes away, I'm good. Something happens to my child, I'm good. The meaning they thought, when you get to this level of spirituality, you should never feel pain anymore, emotional pain. And this man who we call our prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he over and over again was telling me and you that it's okay, it's normal to feel that pain, and not only feel it, but then he taught us. Here's the hadith I wanted to share. He says in that moment, they said, you too, ya Rasulullah? He said, and most of you know the hadith, he said, Innal ayna tadma wal qalbi yahzun wa la naqulu illa ma yarda rabbuna. He gave what would be this psychological blueprint for centuries to come. He says, the eye will cry, the heart will hurt, but we will only say that which pleases God. Oh. Validation of emotion, validation of expression of the emotion. This isn't some woke 2025 American imam up here talking. These are the hadith. He said these words. These are my words. He said, indeed, the heart will hurt. Validation of the emotion. You should hurt right now. Something happened, you should hurt. That's normal. If you don't hurt, that's unnormal. Then we need to see somebody. Why don't you feel anything? And then he said, Innal ayna tadma. Oh, and there'll be an actual physiological impact of that. Now, why am I so sincere? Why am I so thick on this? The reason why this is so important to me is you won't believe it. It's still in. Take this off. This alone? Okay. The reason why this is so clutch is I was at a funeral. And I won't say how many of these? I don't have enough space. I can't just hold it. Bismillah. We're good. I'm loud anyway. Bismillah. The reason why this is so important is I was at a funeral. No, I got it. There was a friend of mine from a certain culture, from this room, in this room. That culture's in the room. What? And his grandmother passed away. This is a very educated man. He studied Islamic studies extensively and Westernly studied as well. Extremely aware, literate of the deen. And he said that we were at the funeral and I was crying. My grandmother died. And my father came over next to me and he kind of elbowed me. Now pull it together. Pull it together. Like your brothers are looking at you. Everyone's looking at you. Pull it together. And he's literate. He knows the hadith. And he sees that the culture here somehow has gone back to the jahili, the pre-Arabian mentality of we don't cry. And so until we have these majalis where we talk about this and reclaim prophetic masculinity and prophetic expression of emotion, slowly, these things creep back up. There was another imam told me this. We were at the janazah of Imam Kashif. Imam Kashif was in Cali, wasn't he? Imam Kashif? Imam Kashif's daughter passed away like 3 years ago. She was only 12 years old. We were all at the janazah. They were in Dallas by that time. They left Cali, came to Dallas. I'm just saying. It's a good place to start your life out. You know what I mean? Gas is mad expensive, bro. So we were at the janazah. Every imam of Dallas is there. We're all standing there. And there's this one imam who's imam in a masjid. And the casket is being brought towards where we're going to pray. And he can't hold it. He starts crying. He has children. And this person from the jama'ah, he doesn't even realize that the guy is a big imam of one of the masjids. So he leans over and he goes, brother, hold it together. Brother, hold it together. And the imam said to me later, he said, man, if it wasn't because of where we were, I would have told him off. But this mentality of masking, holding in, and covering up of emotions is something so far away from what the sunnah is. And it's time that we reclaim that. And so my first, where I started on this journey of emotional intelligence was, for me, I wanted to understand why scholars like Imam Ghazali said that he was the most intelligent of God's creation, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To me, the question was, well, how are they qualifying intelligence if they, 900, 800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they looked at him and they said, that's the peak of intelligence. But if I was to walk up to you in the cafe, in a quick interview, and I was like, who's the most intelligent person you know? Many of us immediately go to STEM. We go Einstein. That's the first thing we all, Einstein. But aren't there more intelligences than just the intelligence of STEM and things like that? I mean, I grew up in a hood. There's something called street smarts that I needed just to get home. You can't test that in an exam. You just have to read faces and read okay, it's shady over here. I'm going the other way. So we all understand there's different types of intelligences. And so I came across a statement of Imam Sha'arani, and I'll share it with you. It's long. I typically put this up as a presentation, but I'll read it to you, inshallah. Imam Sha'arani, and I want you to listen closely, and I want you to think, when I read this to you, I want you to think to yourself, what are the key words that stick out to you, okay? This is a quote. This is Imam Sha'arani from 700 years ago. This is what he says, his quote. Whoever contemplates the Prophet's excellent management of the Arabs, who were like wild scattered beasts, who had repulsive and aloof natures, and how he led them and bore patiently with their boorishness and harms until they began to follow him, rally under him, and fight against their own families and fathers and sons for his sake, and how they preferred him over their own selves. Indeed, if you contemplate these things, you will come to the realization that he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the most intelligent of Allah's creation. What sticks out to you about that? What sticks out to me is that he took this very rough group of people. He wasn't in the burbs. He was in the trenches. And he took these rough people with troubled past. Case in point, Umar. And he took them like diamonds out of a mine. And he cleaned them up until they shined. And then they shined so much that they showed other people their worth. Not their worth, other people's worth. Do you understand what he did? He took these rough people. Case in point, Umar. Umar says, I was addicted to alcohol. I was an alcoholic. I was rough. He beat his sister. But here's what's crazy, y'all don't know. Later on in life, he tells about his dad. He said, my dad was abusive. He used to beat us bad. My dad was abusive. He used to beat us bad. So when we're talking about Umar being so strong, maybe you're celebrating something he almost grew out of. You feel me? Like, you're like, oh, Umar was like this. But the end of Umar, the last Umar was different man. He was a different man. But the Prophet ﷺ, Imam Sha'arani is saying, look at how he, ﷺ, dealt with these rough people. Uneducated, rough people, very eloquent people. Poetry. They could spit poetry like that. Similar. And he took these rough people and he transformed them. If you just study how he transformed these people, he says, you'll realize he was the most intelligent of God's creation. And so what that told me was, well, maybe I need to look at intelligence different. Maybe I need to look at intelligence from the perspective of my impact on people positively around me. Wow, that's profound. My intelligence, prophetic intelligence, would be a scale that would quantify how much of a positive impact I have on the people I interact with, and how much I bring good out of them. Now, I wonder how many of us would be doing really well, how many of us would be very intelligent if that was the scale by which we judged intelligence. It's just something to think about. So, let's start from the Quran. What I want to go through here is I want to go through a few things regarding emotional intelligence, just so we lay out tonight's class. I want to show you some aspects of his teachings that show a clear emotional knowledge and understanding. But eventually, I want you to understand how important this is for you in your life, in your family's life. But I need it to be grounded in the fact that it's sunnah. Why am I saying that? You could have any psychologist and psychiatrist come up here and give you a talk on the importance of emotional understanding. But until you see it as a part of your deen, it's not going to hit the same way. Until you see it as a part of your deen, it won't be the same thing. Until you see your emotional disconnection as, emotional neglect as a type of dhulm, it's not going to hit the same. And so tonight what I'm trying to do is bridge that gap. I want you to see him as someone that taught us the importance of this so that we leave this room mending the bonds and showing love and expressing love to those who need it most in our lives. And you'll do it for one and one reason only. You'll do it for the sake that it's sunnah and it's what my Nabi would want from me. And it's what my family needs, low-key. So we'll begin with a verse of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to the Prophet, he says, if you, O Muhammad, someone get the verse number for me. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. If you, O Muhammad, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, if you were harsh, غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ, hard-hearted, rough, hard-hearted, لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, then everyone would flee from you. Flee from you. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْفَحْ. What's the verse number? Surah? Ali Imran? Ali Imran 159. Just for those who want to reference it later. Ali Imran 159. Now this verse is deep because the verse puts the onus or the burden of keeping the audience upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Meaning you, O Muhammad, have a task. Your task is to deliver this message to these people. You have to deliver it. But you're not just a mailman that leaves it in the mailbox. This is like, you know, when you get those serious mails that you got to sign for? What's it like? Certified joints? Like this message needs to be certified, passed on. And so in order for you to pass this message on, you need to have a deep understanding of the audience that you're giving this message to. Now, I'm not going to go too deep here because I notice what happens when I talk about this. A lot of us are like, well, I'm not doing dawah, so this doesn't really relate to me. And I'm like, yes, you are. You literally have a little brother who looks up to you like you're Superman. You literally have a little sister that thinks you're everything. You literally have a child. You literally have people that look up to you. And especially older siblings. So if you're an older brother in this room, listen up. Because you do have a responsibility. You do have a major responsibility. And unfortunately, a lot of us are not fulfilling that responsibility. So that verse is saying that, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you had this hard heart, this hard nature, then what would happen is that people would flee from you. But you don't, that's why they come close. You don't, that's why they stay near to you. And so what we find here is this verse is clearly highlighting that the ability to keep, now what I typically say about this is one thing. When you walk into a room, do people flee or come in? That's my question. When you walk into the house, is it, yo, Baba's here, Dad's here, yo? Or is it, yo, Baba's here, I'm out, yo? Yo, Mom's here, I'm out, yo. Yo, big sis Baji's here, I'm out. Big bro's here, I'm out. Or is it, come close? That's my litmus test. My litmus test. How do I react with this verse? Is when I come into the room, are people fleeing? Not just running, like, but are they spacing out from me, or are they coming closer? Because the prophetic motto is when he came into the room, people felt like coming closer to him. Why is that important? Because he needs to pass this message on. He needs to pass this message on to them. So the first thing we need to understand that he established is this emotional understanding. Emotional understanding. We're going to start with that tonight. Inshallah. We'll start with that tonight. When we talk about emotional intelligence, I want you to think of this acronym ruler. Ruler, like the ruler you measure stuff with. Ruler. R-U-L-E-R. It's an acronym for emotional intelligence. And I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to highlight how all of these things are exemplified in the sunnah of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But don't look at the screen. I'm going to ask questions, okay? All right. What's the first? We're talking about a level of understanding emotion, a level of interaction with emotion. The first level of emotional intelligence is recognition of emotion. Recognition of emotion. Now, by now, I hope everyone's bought in. The last 30 minutes has just been to buy into the fact that this is prophetic. This isn't Western. This isn't whatever woke. This is prophetic. I need you to understand this is who he was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And before I go further, I'm gonna put the nail in the coffin that if you weren't listening, you'll listen right now. The scariest part about emotional neglect and the inability to connect emotionally is that it's transgenerational. It's transgenerational. What that means is, if your dad never hugged you, bro, don't think all of a sudden you're going to get married and be a hugger, yo. If you never heard I love you, oh, you think you're going to get married, you're going to be like, wifey, I love you. You're going to be like, wifey, Chilo. Bring the tea. What I'm trying to say is this stuff is passed on transgenerationally. And that's why I said, look, older brothers, man. Older brothers, sometimes what I've noticed is we'll have a father or a mother that doesn't express emotion as they should. And the older sibling has dealt with that and they know what it's like. But now there's a younger sibling. And now the younger sibling, we know what they're going through, but the older sibling is supposed to step in. Take them to Target with you, yo. All right, yo, you tell your little sister, let's go to Target. I can go with you? Yeah. Like, what I'm trying to highlight is there's a time when the older sibling has to come in and be like, yo, I love you, little bro. But a lot of y'all, it's too hard to say. It's too hard to say. Is there some woke way they say it now? I know, like, there's mad terms now. You got mad aura. Nah, you can't, that even sound right. Nah, that ain't gonna work. There must be another way they say it now. Nah, man. Come on, man. This was good.
No, they people in that can hear you. That's fine.
Come on.
I can just take that one. No, that one's good. Just give me the one in the left.
Oh, this. Oh, I'm not. Oh, it fell out. This is it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, the idea here is transgenerational. It's transgenerational, and so what we worry about is that I'm trying to just keep going.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. You got to hold it. I got it. We're good. Now we're good. Test. Check it. It's good. Bismillah. All right. The idea here, the last thing, just so we understand how critical this is that it's transgenerational. It's transgenerational, and so if we don't do this, if we don't change ourselves now and try, and it's not too late. It's never too late. And I'll teach you how. We'll talk about some methods of how to do this even tonight, inshallah ta'ala. It's going to be difficult, but it'll be transformative, inshallah ta'ala. That was the last thing I want to say about that. It's transgenerational and it's dangerous that we'll have generations of people that are emotionally disconnected. And when we're emotionally disconnected, one of the things about attachment theory, so a brief rabbit hole will come back, okay? I got you. I'm good at coming back out the hole I went into, okay? Attachment theory is this model by Mary Ainsworth and John Bowlby, but our Prophet taught it to us well before. And basically what it teaches is that we all know we have a respiratory system, a muscular system. We all have these systems inside. We know those. We learned them in 6th grade. But this theory says we have an attachment system inside. And this attachment system is always seeking connection with someone. Always. So think about it. The baby comes into the world. The baby is connected through the umbilical cord. And there's this traumatic moment where the connection is severed right there. You know, dad's in the room. The nurse gives you the scissors if you haven't fainted already, right? And you cut that. And now this source of connection is severed. Now that's a traumatic thing. But what happens, breast milk comes like that, and this child all of a sudden knows how to latch. Like it wasn't doing that before. Maybe there were some things it was learning in the womb, whatever, but it's a new skill, it's a new thing. It's searching for connection. The first thing, all it wants is connection to another human being, correct? That's all it needs. But after 2 years, guess what happens? وَفِطَامُ. It's time to wean. And it's the worst time. It's difficult on mom, dad, baby, everybody's struggling. It's another moment of separation. And now nourishment has to come through a new method. But the theory says that we're always searching for connection. And this is so beautiful because I started this with the hadith of Abdullah bin Salam, where the Prophet says at the beginning, wasilul arham, like connect, because we all need connection. Now what the theory says, what's scary, is that based on our early childhood experiences, we then build models on how we will connect to other people later in life. So, you know, you think you have issues trusting people when actually you got daddy issues. And I say this all the time. Quote me on this. People aren't angry with Allah. There's people that are just angry with their dad or their mom. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to berate on dads today. The idea is that they learned they could not trust that someone would be there, emotionally be there. Because physical proximity, we all give. When we say presence, we are not talking at all about physical presence. We are talking about emotional presence. That is the presence that is truly soothing to a child, soothing to a baby, soothing to a husband, soothing to a wife, soothing to a younger brother. Emotional presence. And so there's a study Yaqeen did about attachment models being indicative of a person's ability to attach and connect to God. So the imam is up on the minbar saying, trust Allah. And in the back of your head, you're like, trust. I've never trusted. Trust who? Trust. And you don't even realize where that's coming from. And so if you want to build a wholesome believer, if you want to raise a wholesome believer, it starts by just showing them and being there for them and teaching them that you can trust in this world. You can trust that someone will be there for you. Can I share one crazy thing from the Quran with you guys? Yusuf alayhi salam. That story is like a crazy story. Like that would be a Netflix crazy joint, yo. No, for real, that story's crazy. So Joseph, we know, is beloved by his dad. He gets the attention. The emotional presence is there, right? Cool, jealousy creeps in. We don't have to talk about that. That's not the topic for tonight. But 20-something years later, Joseph finds himself in a fitna where he's being seduced. And the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّ بِهِ وَهَمَّتْ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّي. That there was a moment where he's a human being. He's a prophet, but he's a human being. So there was a thought of, should I do this or not do this? But then the Quran says he saw a sign from God. Now think about it. It's a moment of fitna. There's an attractive opportunity. There's no one around. There's wealth. There's everything there. There's secrecy. There's everything there. He himself is stunning, half of beauty. I mean, mashallah. Looks like this brother right here. Mashallah. Mashallah. He turned red. And he's a Daisy too. How you turning red, bro? Dang. No, so Joseph is in this tough moment, alayhi salam. He's in this very tough moment. And the Quran says that he saw a sign from God. All right, what's the sign? An angel, lightning in the window, psh, back off. You know, like, do you know what they say? Ibn Abbas says, he saw a vision of his father saying, son, we don't do that. Yo, you don't get it. Like, that teaches us that you can form such a strong emotional bond that even when your physical proximity and presence is absent, your emotional presence is still there guiding the person. I mean, that's enough for tonight, guys. You can form such an emotional bond that even when you are physically not present, you can still be a source of hidayah and guidance and you're thousands of miles away because of the emotional investment that happened early on. I was giving this talk in Chicago, and I was working with people who work in recidivism, like keeping people from going back into prison. And a lot of them, you have to, keep them away from the old habits that they would do, keep them away from the blocks that they used to hang out on, all of that stuff. And I'm talking to the teachers, I'm talking to the counselors. And I shared this same point that I just shared with you. And one of the counselors, he said, man, this is beautiful. And I was like, why? Tell me. He said, one of my students, he called them students. He said, one of my students texted me the other day. And he said that, I was walking towards the drug house. I was walking towards the spot. And then I heard your voice. I heard your voice saying, don't go. Stay strong. I heard your voice. And to me, that teaches me and you. You're worried, what will my kid be like when he goes off to college? Well, what are you doing right now when he's 4? Where's the emotional investment now? Because you'll be there for him, even when you're not there. But if you're not there for him now, you'll never be there. And then that's why we have Sahaba who were like, I saw the Prophet in a dream. Like, he's gone, but I was still, he was still guiding me. So my point of the attachment theory, I want to back out of that rabbit hole, right? That digression we went on. I want us to understand that there are real world implications to not emotionally investing in the people around you who are supposed to get the emotional investment from you. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's no one on this planet who can show a daughter love like her father or mother. But if she doesn't get it from them, she's going to try to get it from somewhere else. So that's your responsibility. But unfortunately, we're busy trying to provide the material. I don't think anyone complains about my dad not leaving enough material. Most people complain my dad didn't give me enough time. Nobody is standing at a grave like, man, he left broke, man. No, for real, think about it. Nobody's at the grave eulogizing, saying, we broke though. No, they're like, he grinded, he tried, he struggled. But what they will say, in the heart at least, man, we didn't have time with him. We didn't get time with him. We didn't get time with him. Sorry, it just hit me because, I'm here. My kids are like, we didn't get time with them. And that's all you value after is the time. But for us, please understand, time is emotional investment, not just physical proximity. And that comes through conversation. Conversation is it. That's where it happens, conversation. Depth, breadth, and frequency. Depth, breadth, and frequency. A sign that a relationship is thriving is that these things increase. The breadth of conversation increases, the depth of conversation increases, and the frequency increases. If this is a sign that your relationship is getting tighter. If there's only 3 topics you could talk to your dad about, or else everything else is like off limits, that's not a good sign. The breadth of communication needs to be wide. We could talk about anything. Me and Baba could talk about anything. But how many of us in this room with our own daughters, I'm speaking to mothers too, we set up these boundaries of what is okay to talk about, what's not okay to talk about. With our father, same thing. We can't even talk to dad about this stuff. And I think that we need to really reconsider that. Okay, so we talked about attachment theory, and we talked about attachment theory's implication on our models of connection later. And we talked about it being transgenerational. And then we talked about attachment theory and the model affecting our ability to connect to God. And I referenced the article on Yaqeen Institute. I want you to read more on that tonight, inshallah. How attachment theory and our models of connection with God. It's a very important thing to read. Okay, I want to move now back over to emotional intelligence, right? And I want to talk about this for a moment. I said the acronym. Who remembers the acronym? Ruler, thank you. All right, what does the R stand for? Recognition. Did I say that already? Yes. Oh, I did, okay. The R stands for recognition. When we look at the Prophet ﷺ's life, and I'm just going to give examples of each of these from his life because, again, I want you to leave here not thinking on just some Western psychological perspective. I want you to think this is sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ, he once said to Aisha, "Oh Aisha, I know when you're angry with me and I know when you're happy with me." Now this may sound very trivial, but it's not. It shows a man who's tapped in. You know, we say lock in, bro, lock in. Like he was locked in on wifey. He was tapped in. He understood her without her expressing it. Recognition. So we got to finish the narration. She goes, now, first of all, how do you think, I want you to think, when he said this to her, how do you think it would make her feel? To know that someone's watching you that closely, aware of your idiosyncrasies and all the small things about you. You're a prophet of Allah, you got an ummah to save, but you can notice my mood changes and stuff, and you know me that well. It feels good to know that someone knows you. It feels good to know that somebody knows you. There's a lot of unmarried people in this room, man. My bad, bro. One day, bro. One day. Say inshallah. 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 Talk to Sister Lubna, man. She'll make stuff work. You know what I mean? Nah, yo, this is rizq. It's all rizq. It's all rizq. Y'all remember the Umar said, romance is rizq? Everybody start tripping. Hey. No, what was I saying? So he says to her, I know when you're angry, I know when you're happy. So she goes, how? So she's relishing in this moment. She goes, okay, how? What do you know? And he goes, when you're happy with me, you say, La wa Rabbi Muhammad. You say, no, I swear by the Lord of Muhammad. No, I swear by the Lord of Muhammad. Just like a figure of speech. La wa Rabbi Muhammad. Right? And she goes, yeah, that's true. You're right. And then she goes, well, what about when I'm angry? She goes, when you're angry with me, you go, La wa Rabbi Ibrahim. You know, you say, no, by the Lord of Abraham. And it's like my kids, you know, when my kids acting up, I tell my wife, get your son. Get your son. Get your son. That's your son right now. That ain't my boy, that's yours, right? So she said, yeah, you're right. And then she goes, wala ahjur illa ismuk. She goes, but I'm only leaving out your name. Which shows a level of emotional control on her side too. Mind you, she's only 16, 17. Yeah, she's a teenager, y'all. She is not a 30, 40-year-old woman. She is a teenager, right? The marriage was young. We know that. Come on, that's the first thing everyone, right? Everyone's looking up Yaqeen Institute, like, how do I figure this out? You know what I mean? So she's only like, 16, 17 years old, right? She's young. But even at that age, she goes, true, you're right, you got me. You pinned me down, Ya Rasulullah, you got me. But she goes, but I'm only leaving out your name. Meaning, in other words, when other people get angry, they add a lot to your name. They add to your name. You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that. She goes, I'm just leaving out your name. And she gave a model for all of us later that on the worst day when you're angry with hubby, who's the worst person on the planet right now, all you do is just leave, like, she's not adding. So she taught us something so deep there. And she was only 16 at the time, if that. SubhanAllah. The next R-U, what does U stand for? Understanding. Understanding. And I would even say that this hadith I just said shows recognition and understanding. Because recognition is you're angry, understanding is I know where it's coming from. I got the, you know, like siblings, you know you could press a button. Man, we got switches on siblings. We could hit a button like this, like in case of emergency, pop open, boom, destroy, self-destruct, big fight happening. Because we understand them deeply. We have deep emotional understanding. And so if we really want to bring pain, na'udhu billah, right? Then we could flip that switch and like a fire alarm and we could cause it to happen. That's emotional understanding. But what we want to do is we want to use emotional understanding to uplift people. We want to use emotional understanding to uplift people. Letter L. Who wants to guess it? It's about emotions. We want to express emotions. We want to understand emotions. Label. See, listen, they say if you can't name it, you can't tame it. If you can't name it, you can't tame it. And so the ability to build a verbose emotional vocabulary. Like if I was to ask these 5 brothers in a row how you feeling, it would be like good, 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 good. So I'll look at it this way. I've never done this experiment, but I'm about to try the experiment. You ready? All right, y'all sat here. Name a color. Don't think too much. It will. The experiment won't work. Name a color. Name a color. Name a color. Name a color. Okay. Name a color. Name a color. Name a color. 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 All right, it didn't work too well. I told you I never did it before. I look at emotions like colors, and my wife is really good at these weird colors. Nuances in colors. I'll be wearing something that I think matches, and she'll be like, you ain't matching. And to me, it looks like it's matching. And so what I was hoping to see through that is sometimes we just stick to those primary colors, and similarly, we stick to those primary emotions, but we need to build a broader vocabulary for emotions so that you can express yourself in more eloquence about how you're feeling. Otherwise, you start putting feelings into these big baskets of red. So I got a whole cabinet of green thobes. She's like, they're not all green. I'm like, they're all green. She's like, nah, there's a spectrum there. You know what I'm trying to say? And so labeling is very important. And so let's think of a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ taught us to label. I think one of the hadith that comes to my simple hadith we all know is the Prophet ﷺ said, La taghdab, don't get angry, which requires labeling it. Number 2, I think, is the one where he says, if you love a person, tell them you love them. I think that too has a level of being able to label the feeling that I have. Now here's the crazy part about labeling is the limbic part of our brain is developed well before the neocortex. And so when we're little babies, we're feeling a lot, but we can't talk about it. So it's frustrating, we're like, right? We're babies, but we can't express what we feel. And I think a lot of us are 30, 40, 50 years old still acting like that. We feel a lot, but we can't say it. We can't say it. We don't know how to articulate that. And so there's just all this we're like babies because all this is built up. I feel so much, but I can't talk, I can't express it. And that creates such a problem. So how do we get a more verbose, emotional vocabulary? Talking. explore what we're going through. We all need that. Next is E, ruler, right? Ruler, expression. The Prophet taught us in that hadith of healthy expression of emotion. He didn't teach us to keep it all in. He taught us, Innal ayn tadma, the eye will cry. That's expression. Wal qalb yahzan, the heart hurts. That's validation. So the expression is taught by him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He taught us that. And so figuring out the proper ways to express love. Now I'll say something here. Some of us have to learn, not to be cliche, but the love language of people close to us. I do think we should all learn how to explicitly tell someone how we feel about them. You put you're putting your child to sleep and you tell them I love you. Say that. Say that. Say that. Say it. But then when there's a certain age of lack of cognitive flexibility, it may be hard to teach an older parent or grandparent these new things. It's very difficult. So at that point, I think we have to learn how to read their love. And I preface it that way because I think it's important to us all try. I'm at a certain age in my life. I'm not just going to say, oh, that's how I am. No, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep, keeping that emotional availability there for my children, even though it's difficult sometimes, or with my mother. I'm going to keep that emotional availability there. But expression of emotion is big. Now, here's something I typically do in this halaqah. A lot of us struggle with the closest people to us, that we've never felt that close love with them, right? And so we're going to do something today, but it's going to take a little bravery on your side, okay? Because you're going to walk out of here and you're going to want to act on this. But it's going to be awkward. What do I do? So we're going to do it together. Everybody take out your phone. Everybody take out your phone. Quiet. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. Oh, y'all don't know it? 1, 2 eyes on you. All right. Who's the person? You don't got to speak. Who's the person that you need to build that connection emotionally with? Don't speak. This isn't therapy time. That's after. All right, take out your phone, pull that person up. I'm doing it too. But don't send nothing yet, all right? We're going to do this together. All right, ready? I got my person. Everyone got their person? You got to have somebody.